So, how about free agency so far?
Dude, free agency, of course, man. That's always exciting. By the way, quick live trying to catch me right there. Man, normally you open it with and we're live and I get to do the intro, but
I
not
think this
today.
is more. I catch you off guard, and I think that people want to see you off guard more.
Yeah, you caught me sleeping. But yeah, let's get into this, free agency. You want to do some offseason grades?
For sure.
All right. So these are going to change as the season gets closer because I think all of us Pistons fans believe there's a couple of more moves waiting. Like Troy Weaver has not emptied his clip this offseason yet. There's still a few moves that need to be made. But I'm going to so far give it an A-. And here's why. He addressed two issues in these trades. He addressed shooting with Joe Harris. We'll get into that in a little bit. He addressed the backup point guard spot. Again, we'll get into that in a little bit. And now you have three guys, Bojan, Joe Harris, and Monte Morris, all essentially on one-year deals. They all got one-year deals left on their contracts. And if I'm doing this from memory, that's $19 million from Bojan, $19 million from Joe Harris, and I think $9 or $10 million from Monte Morris. So this is giving the Pistons a ton of money to work with next offseason. I know people wanted a big splash this year in free agency. I get it. I did too. We were talking about Cam Johnson, Harrison Barnes, Kelly Oubre, to name a few, talking about all of it. But I get it, though. And I think there's going to be a bigger splash next year, and it all depends on if Cade Cunningham looks like a top 25 player in the NBA. Because I think if you have that one guy that says, I can be better than the rest, you're going to want to invest in another star, like a Pascal Siakam, like some fans wanted, like some fans are still talking about. You can make a bigger splash for a bigger name like that. It all depends on Cade Cunningham, though. Not Jaden Ivey, not Jalen Duren. No offense to those guys, but this is Cade's team. If he looks like a top 25 player when he is healthy, you will see the Pistons next year make a big splash in free agency. So that's why I'm giving this offseason an A- so far. There's no perfect scores when we do this, but A- is pretty damn high. But what about you, Anthony? How would you grade this offseason?
I think I want to separate the two. I think if you're talking about like actually signing a free agent, he hasn't done it yet, so I can't give him a grade there. But just for like trades and acquisitions, like you said, he addressed the backup point guard position in Monte Morris, who is a phenomenal backup point guard. He does not turn the ball over. Shoots around 38% from three. Just a great guy, and he's back home. So I know a lot of people are excited about that. Like shout out to Monte Morris. The Joe Harris trade caught me off guard. I was not expecting that, but you address 3-point shooting. He shot 40% from three the past 6 seasons. Now, if you look at his stats this season, he obviously was going through injuries. That's what a lot of Brooklyn Nets fans that I was talking to, they're like, he was going through injuries. He just wasn't Joe Harris. So, if he comes back fully healthy, you got another guy like a Bojan Bogdanovic, like a Alec Burks. Joe Harris is shooting 40% from three. And we were a terrible 3-point shooting team last year. So you're adding a 40% 3-point shooter on this team. Bench is going to be fun. And Monte Morris shot 38% from three. So, I mean, you did get some stability at the backup point guard position. You added more 3-point shooting. Now, I know it's not the sexy names, like you said. It's not the Cam Johnsons. It's not the Jeremy Grants. It's not the Kyle Kuzmas. It's none of that. And if you looked, all of those guys got paid over $100 million.
Yeah.
Like we talked about it last week. Kyle Kuzma was looking for $30 million a year. He got it. Jeremy Grant, 150, he got it, or 160, he got it. Shout out to him. Like, I think Troy Weaver had a pretty good indication that this free agency was going to be inflated like crazy. I think that's why he chose to make trades versus try to, put his name in the race. I mean, look what the Houston Rockets did.
Yep.
They had to pay a lot for Fred VanVleet, who is a great player, by the way, but they had to pay a lot to get him. They gave Dylan Brooks $80 million, exactly what he was asking for. So I think if you look at it from that standpoint, there were pretty good moves by Troy Weaver. And like you said, I don't think he's done. I think they have around $300,000 left in cap space. So they're going to have to make some moves. They waived Eugene Amarui, which was, I guess, a non-guaranteed deal. So we'll see what happens there. But I think it was a pretty good offseason so far. Like you said, Troy's not done, but you add 2 more vets to this team that can help you in the win column. So I like it.
But if you had to put a letter grade on it, I'm applying a little pressure.
Letter grade, I'll give him a B+.
Okay. I went a little higher. But I think we're both in agreement. So far it has been a good offseason, and there are a few more moves to be made. We talked about, you just mentioned Fred VanVleet's name a little bit ago, and I do like him as a player. That's a lot of money to be given to a 6-foot point guard that shot the ball not up to his standards last year. I do realize the Houston Rockets need a point guard. They need someone to run the show. They need someone to feed Jalen Green, Kevin Porter Jr., Jabari Smith, need someone to set those guys up. The Dylan Brooks one, man, $20 million a year for his services, man. That seems, I don't know. That seems a little bit like an overpay, just a little bit. Would you rather the Pistons have made a big splash or did what they did so far this offseason?
When I look at this class, I don't really think there's a player out there that I would want to overpay. Like we talked about last week, like we'd be comfortable with giving Cam Johnson 25, Brooklyn gave him 27.
Yeah.
So I just don't look at the players in this free agency class of being worth to, give them a big contract or a big splash, like you said. But I could understand why Houston went for Dylan Brooks. It makes a whole lot of sense. If you look at Udoka, he really values defense and leadership, and I think he can provide both of those things in Houston for them.
I was just surprised at some of the wings they gave up, though, like, Kenyon Martin Jr., Josh Christopher. I mean, Josh Christopher wasn't going to get big minutes on this team anyways behind Jalen Green because, obviously he's their guy. They believe in Kevin Porter Jr., but it just, man, Josh Christopher, he's in a good situation in Memphis, though. He's definitely going to get some run out there. Let's move on to some news, though. We talked about it a little bit ago when we mentioned these two names, but Brooklyn Nets, they trade Joe Harris and 2 future second-round picks to the Detroit Pistons. He's a 43.7 career three-point shooter. We're going to round that number up to make it a little sexier, 44% career three-point shooter. So he played 74 games last year, 14 the year before, but back in the 2018 to 2019 season, he shot 47% from 3 on 5 attempts. And then 2 years later in the 2020-21 season, 6 3-pointers a game, shooting 47.5% from the 3-point line. Dude, it's just, that is so unreal. Like I said, career 44% shooter from 3. It's just, it's unbelievable. I mean, I feel like even if he doesn't average the Bojan numbers, like he's not going to get 20 points per game, but Cade and Ivy are going to generate so many open threes. Now you throw Monte Morris in the mix too. There's going to be a lot of open threes for these Pistons, and they're finally going to fall for the Detroit Pistons. Someone had tweeted at me that Joe Harris is a non-shot creator. I disagree with that. I believe this is a guy that he creates his own shots by moving without the ball. The Pistons have not had a movement 3-point shooter. Bojan, I don't consider him one of those guys. He's more of a standstill catch and shoot. He can put the ball on the ground and create some space himself. But a guy that can actually move around the perimeter, relocate, create open looks for himself, they do not have a guy like this, and they have not had a guy like this. And that's what you get in Joe Harris. You get a movement 3-point shooter. And I love the move. What about you?
I like the fact that they gave us 2 seconds just to take on his contract because it was a salary dump. Because if they didn't move Joe Harris, they probably would have had a really hard time signing Cam Johnson. I love the fact that he's an elite 3-point shooter. And I do want to give Ryan Anton a shout out on YouTube. He said Joe Harris has the highest career 3-point percentage by any active shooter at 43.7%. Shout out Ryan for that stat. Like I said earlier, last 6 seasons, 40% from 3. If he can take on that Wayne Ellington role from a few years ago, like you said, just being a movement shooter, he's going to create so many open looks. Like, what I like about this trade is It's a 1-year rental, so if it doesn't work out, you're not really attached to the money. You get 2 second-round picks to replenish the 2 that you did trade for Sasser. I love this for Cade, and I love this for Jaden Ivey because having guys like that just running off picks, being movement players, I think they're really going to thrive off of that, and it's really going to take the stress off of them, saying like, hey, maybe I need to get a bucket. Oh no, there's Joe Harris over there in the corner running for 3. So I absolutely love bringing in elite 3-point shooters like Harris, but I just love the move, man. Like I can't even like really describe how I feel because like we've been so bad from 3 like the past couple of years to get a guy that statistically is one of the best 3-point shooters in the league. I'm happy for the Pistons.
Yeah, and I mean, someone can correct me wrong in the comments, but I believe Cade's rookie year, the Pistons were top 5 in open looks from the 3-point line during his rookie year. Like they were generating a lot of open looks, but they just were not knocking them down. And it's $19.9 million coming off the books next year. Like I talked about earlier, that's a lot of money. But do you think this is setting the Pistons up for another trade?
I had read somewhere, I want to say it was Evan Messi. I'm not 100% sure, but with the Damian Lillard rumors going on right now, there's a chance that Dame wants to go to Brooklyn.
Okay.
The Pistons could be a third team getting involved into a 3-team trade if he does get traded to Brooklyn, where they could get possibly maybe some salary cap relief. Maybe they can unload Bagley somewhere. I don't know. Because the Harris trade is just a verbal agreement. It's not official yet. Like a lot of these are just verbal agreements. Like Brook Lopez verbally agreed to go to 2 other teams, and he re-signed with Milwaukee. So we'll see. But I think there are going to be moves, but they're going to be very marginal. I don't really think it's going to be like a crazy trade by any means.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a huge trade either. I don't see the Pistons bringing in one of those top guys like we all want just yet. I think that's going to be saved for next year. But let's move on to the second piece. The Pistons also traded for Monte Morris, who last year as a starter averaged, I think they also traded a second-round pick. They traded a second-round pick, and I think they got maybe some money involved or something, or they traded some money for him. But anyways, Monte Morris as a starter last year averaged 10, 3, and 5, while also only committing 1 turnover per game. For his career, he's only averaging 0.8 turnovers a game. We're going to keep it at 0.8. We're not rounding up for that. His shooting numbers are great as well. 48, 39, 83. I believe that was last year. And I think he's a career 38-point shooter too as well. Oh, for career, he is 39, actually. That's impressive. So, yeah, they got a great backup guard. They addressed that need. No more Kojo. Probably no more Killian Hayes playing that backup point guard role either. I know a lot of people are excited about that. And he comes home. He was the 2013 Mr. Michigan basketball player in the state of Michigan, like the highest award, the Michigan's Heisman Award, and he won it. So what do you think about that move?
I love it. I was not expecting it. Obviously, Washington is in a situation where they were over the cap, so they had to make that move. I think it tells you more of like what Troy Weaver looks at the guard position, specifically the backup guard position. I know me and you were debating, arguing, will Killian Hayes be the backup point guard? Well, now he's a third string backup point guard.
Yeah.
I think it's Monte Morris's job, and I think it brings stability to that position, in my opinion. You bring in a veteran guard that's not going to make a whole lot of mistakes, that makes the right plays, hell of a defender. I love the move. For a second-round pick, I think it's a steal. It was a salary dump from Washington's end. I think we both understand that. But, again, a guy that you have for a year, see if it works. It's not long-term money that's attached. I love the move, and I think Monty Williams had a big say in this because he likes those veteran backup point guards. He likes those guards that don't make a whole lot of mistakes.
Yeah, I believe he did I think it was with an interview with Omari Sankofa II, where he talked about the jump in wins with the Phoenix Suns his first year from 19 to 34, where he said really a huge reason that happened was having a veteran point guard like Ricky Rubio. He's a guy that loves veteran point guards, whether they're starting or whether they're coming off the bench. They add a need, and they got a great one in Monte Morris. Yeah, I was laughed at a couple of episodes ago, though, saying that Killian Hayes would be a third string point guard. I did not know that they would bring in, honestly, one of my favorite players in Monte Morris, man. I was just so ecstatic when I saw that news come across the screen. I don't think this means Killian Hayes is done completely in Detroit. I still think there's a little time. I just think this sets him up to play possibly a different role with the Pistons. It's going to be minor, but I still think there's going to be a role for Killian Hayes, at least to start the season, possibly even just in preseason, to see how much he's improved, to see if there's some consistency in that shot. But I still think there's a chance for Killian Hayes. I don't know if he'll be traded just yet. I don't think he has that much value to be brought up in a trade. But yeah, huge for the Pistons to get Monte Morris, even if it is just a salary dump. It's pretty great. The Detroit Pistons have picked up Isaiah Livers' option. And in my opinion, this is one of the best bargains for his skill set if, and it's a big if he can stay healthy, because he's a 3-and-D guy, good three-point shooter, can play, you can put him on the best players. Obviously, he's not going to stop anybody. Nobody does in the NBA, but he can make things difficult. He's a good connector on offense. It's just, again, that big if he can stay healthy. But what are your thoughts on this move by the Detroit Pistons?
I think $1.8 million for Isaiah Livers is a bargain. He's a guy that shot, I believe, 36% from three. He took on the best player and tried his best to defend him. I mean, our help side defense was atrocious last year, but he's a valuable bench piece. I mean, for $1.8 million, you're not really having to break the bank to get a guy that, he's a pretty good 3-point shooter. Only knock on him really is the injury history. Like, the guy can stay healthy. I think you have a pretty solid bench piece for the Pistons, but I love this move. I know we're going to talk about it in a little bit. The only move that didn't make sense to me was the Eugene picking up his option and then deciding to waive him, even though it was non-guaranteed. You wasted $2 million in cap doing that.
Yeah, so Isaiah Livers is a career 38% 3-point shooter, shot 42% from three his rookie year. Small sample size, just 19 games. But still, once that shot's fallen, he's a good shooter in the NBA. Yeah, Eugene Amarui, he got waived. He got picked up and then he got waived. Like, weird move for him. I feel like Troy Weaver does this sometimes just to make sure the guys get a little bit of money. You know what? Hey, even though you're not on the team, we're going to leave you with a little bit of pocket money. There you go. You got paid a little bit. I'm going to miss Eugene. I never thought he had a huge role. I was never one of those Pistons fans that thought he was going to be a huge piece of the future on this team. But it's sad to see him go, man. I mean, we've kind of fallen in love with a few of these guys over the years. Your Braxton Keys, your Tyler Cooks, your Donta Halls, your Jamarco Pickett's. Just these guys that are unheralded coming out into the NBA. Probably on a team before, waived on. They show you a flash of something, and we all quickly fall in love. So my question to you is, where would Eugene Amarui rank on your fan favorites list out of Braxton Key, Tyler Cook, Dante Hall, and Jamarco Pickett?
I probably put Jamarco Pickett first on my board because I thought he would do something, and he still gets buckets in the G League, by the way. He was with Cleveland this year. I think Eugene is probably going to be on the Cruise this year, and I will be covering Cruise games this year, so I would not be surprised if he took I can't think of his name right now. David Nwaba's spot, because he went overseas. So I could definitely see him fitting into that role. But I liked him. I liked his effort. I liked his defensive scrappiness. My only gripe, and you already know this, is don't celebrate with the other team.
I was just about to ask you, what will he be remembered more for? Celebrating with the Oklahoma City Thunder or just hustling on the court?
Yeah, like, he'll be remembered for hustling, but when you say Eugene Amarui, I think of that Thunder pick right away.
Yeah.
Like, I don't really remember like the 2 weeks that he was here for. Like, I just don't. I remember that picture more, but hey, man, like, I get it. It's your former team, but like, even if it is your former team, like, catch up with them after the game. Like, you got posted all over social media, and everyone's just like, "Wow, no one wants to play for Detroit."
Yeah, he acted like he got traded right after that game. He was about to do a jersey swap. Yeah, it was very interesting. He will be remembered for that. By the way, my favorite player of the fringe guys, Tyler Cook, man. There's just something about him, man. And I think he's still with the Chicago Bulls, but I love Tyler Cook. Killian Hayes, talking about him again here real quick. He did not make the French national team, and I'm a little disappointed in the French, man. I don't get it. I don't get why you didn't want Killian Hayes. They went with Frank Nicolina. I just butchered that last name, but he's a solid point guard, so I get it. But, Killian Hayes needs every opportunity to, create some consistency in his game, gain some confidence, do something. And we've seen point guards in his position, like a Carlos Arroyo, just go off in the national tournaments, like whether it's FIBA or the Olympics. Like, we've seen them do this before where, they get another look by an NBA team to extend that NBA career, but Killian Hayes will not get that opportunity. So I don't know, man. It's just looking bad for him all around. I kind of feel for the kid.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, I think it was towards the end of the season, he said he wanted to try out for the French national team. He thought that, it would be a good experience for him, and even reached out to a fellow Frenchman in Nick Batum saying, like, hey, I really want to make the team. When tried out for it, didn't make it. Frank Nicolina made it, obviously, former lottery pick as well with the Knicks. But, I mean, I don't really think there's a debate who's the better point guard. I kind of feel like they're both mid. They're both like, they're both defensive. They can play make and they can't shoot threes. Like, I don't know, man. It's kind of kicking the balls, if you ask me, where it's like you try to, make the national team where you're from, and they say no. So I hope he's in the lab, man. I really do. I hope he proves a lot of people wrong this year, because I feel like there are so many people that have left the Killian Hayes like bandwagon, and they're just like, dude, like, get rid of this guy. He sucks.
And dude, he just pulls you right back in. Like, I remember last season, and he just had that nice little streak where he looked like a really good NBA player, where he's averaging like 12, 6, and 4 or whatever, with like a steal or two a game, shooting pretty decently from the floor. And I'm like, dude, this kid, man, he's pulling me right back in. I just went on a podcast and just said, let's just trade him. Let's dump him for whoever. And here he is, pulling up, looking like a starter. He's going to do it again this year. You just know something's going to happen here. Killian Hayes is just going to look good for some reason. Hopefully it's not an injury. There's just going to be something that happens, and Killian Hayes is going to pull me right back in. But I'm saying it here. I'm saying it now. I am off officially the Killian Hayes train. He's a Detroit Piston. I'll root for him, but you know what I'm saying? I think he is what he is, and that's a third string point guard.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's sad because he got drafted so high.
Yep.
And there was a lot of expectations among fans of like him being good. And if you saw the Tyrese Halliburton extension this weekend, you're probably just thinking to yourself, like, wow, that's a lot. That's a lot of money.
Dude, him and LaMelo got the bag, bro. That's what, like $52 million, I think, a year or something. That is crazy to play basketball. That's unbelievable. I feel like the Pistons should just permanently retire the number 7, because it has been such bad juju for years now, man. Like, I think Brandon Knight wore it. It did not look good. We know how his career panned out. He had a few moments in the NBA, had a cup of coffee. Didn't? Yeah, Stanley Johnson wore number 7 as well.
Maker.
Yep. And well,
Brandon Knight.
Yeah, Brandon Knight, Stanley Johnson, and now Killian Hayes. It's a graveyard number. Don't try to come in and be like, look, I'm going to break the curse. Didn't someone say they were going to break the number 7 curse? I feel like someone had said that years ago, and it just, whoever it was, we don't remember their name.
No, I mean, they should just retire it and put Kelly Tripucka up in the rafters. I'm kidding, by the way, but that 7 is cursed. I said, I still like him as a player. He's still young, good defender, hell of a passer. But I think if you look at the Monte Morris signing, the writing's on the wall.
I'm telling you, man, this is why they should try my little experiment that I was talking about. Play him at the off guard spot, try to find creative ways, try to maximize him defensively, and just have him cut like his French teammate we're about to talk about here in just a couple of minutes. Have him cut to the basket and try to be more aggressive. Give him less responsibility on offense. We got another piece of news, though, unless you got any more thoughts on Killian Hayes.
The guy that we're going to talk about, one of the new two-way players, guess what number he wore?
Don't even tell me number 7.
Number 7.
Why do they do this? Why do they do this? Pistons should stop signing French basketball players. Give them a chance on another team. Killian Hayes, Sekou, and the guy we're about to talk about here in a couple of minutes. But before we get to him, the Detroit Pistons, John Beilein, the advisor coach, is no longer with the Pistons. They've let him go. And it's kind of a sad day, dude. That guy working on people's jumpers, making them better. He's no longer in the building. I hope he finds another job at the college level. I mean, I think college basketball misses him. He's a fantastic coach, never been fired from a job, always left, even when I think things were about to get better. But John Beilein, no longer a Detroit Piston. What are your thoughts on that?
Hold on. Someone said something in the chat, and I just want to double check it. Procida traded to the Clippers. I did not see that, Ryan.
That just happened?
I don't think so. You're making me double check Twitter.
I thought it was Balsa.
Yeah, I think it was Balsa. I think you're getting the confused. Okay, man, you freaking. Even though we haven't seen Procida, man, you scared the shit out of me for a second. Because he is here, but he's not playing on the summer league team because of, I think contracts and visas, but whatever. Getting to your question, I think it's very common when you get a new head coach, you let go of the other coaches. Like Rashard Lewis is no longer with the Pistons. All the other assistants. Beilein is no longer with the Pistons. What I found interesting was he kind of teased he might get back into college coaching.
That's what I hope.
And one of the teams that was rumored was West Virginia, where he got started at. A lot of Michigan fans are like, come back, get Howard out of here.
Stop. Speaking of Juwan Howard, I was just listening to a podcast with him. The Pistons in the 90s, his third year in the league, because he was considered a free agent before he became like one of the first $100 million contract players. Guess how much the Pistons offered him to play in Detroit?
I have no idea.
$112 million to come play in Detroit. Yeah. It was between the Pistons, the Heat, and the Washington Bullets at the time. I mean, there was no chance he was coming back to Detroit. I mean, I know he's from Chicago, but he played at the U of M. We all know the famed career. But I hope John Beilein, again, gets another coaching job. If it is West Virginia, that's cool. I loved rooting for those guys back in the day, man. Dominic James, I believe, was that point guard. Kevin Pittsnagel, the guy with the tattoos everywhere, 6'11", averaging 5 rebounds a game, but shooting like 38% from 3 is incredible. The Pistons have signed – sorry that I'm moving through these so quickly, but the Pistons have signed Jared Rhoden and Malcolm Cazelan, that's how I'm going to say his name, as their new two-way contracts. Malcolm Cazelan, he is the French teammate of Killian Hayes, also apparently supporter of number 7. Yeah, what do you think about these two guys? I mean, we saw Jared Rhoden a little bit last year, primarily with the Crews. He's one of those hustle players. He can play some defense. He's going to dive on the ground if you need him to. But tell us a little bit more about Jared Rhoden. I think you're the only guy that's ever watched him play more than 2 games.
So Rhoden, if you didn't really get to see his time with Detroit, which was very short-lived, he's a combo guard. He's a guy that can kind of do it all. He can shoot threes, you can defend, he can pass. When I talk with some of my G League buddies, they call him Walmart Cade. Kind of just like the joke, like he's a Walmart Cade Cunningham, just like a downgrade. But he's a good player, and he's a really good kid too, like really humble. these guys, you're not going to see a whole lot of them. They're going to be with the Motor City Cruise. These are just insurance policies. They're two ways. You don't really see a whole lot of two-way players. You'll probably see them more on a Detroit Pistons bench than you will see them on a Detroit Pistons court. They're mostly going to be with the Cruise. With Malcolm is a guy that did declare for the draft, did not get drafted. A lot of people thought he would be a draft and stash type of a player.
Yeah.
And that wasn't the case. He got a deal by the Pistons, obviously a two-way. He's a combo guard. He's a 6'6" guard that's, really athletic, loves to catch lobs, can finish at the rim. Only thing with him that you really probably don't like is the shooting numbers aren't the best. He can't I can't say he can't finish with his right hand. He can. It's just it's not his dominant hand, and you could tell when he goes right. But he's very athletic, and I think there's some defensive promise with his game. He's got a 6'11" wingspan, and he's 6'6". So there may be something there. Maybe that's why they gave him a two-way spot. Maybe they're looking at him as maybe a cheap Hamidou Diallo filler. I don't know. There's definitely promise there with him. I wouldn't say he's a bad prospect to give a two-way to.
He's honestly kind of like the opposite of Killian Hayes when it comes offensively. He plays with a lot more confidence offensively when it's attacking and finishing at the rim. He's very good at cutting off the ball and finding space in the defense to get a shot off. Only shot around 28% from three, but his shot is more consistent. It's not all over the place like Killian's, which was a big complaint of mine. He's not the playmaker that Killian is, but he also does, like you're saying, he has the two-way promise of as being a defensive player, but it's a long shot for him. He's undrafted. He's starting on a two-way deal. I don't know how many guys really have made huge names for themselves starting out that way, going undrafted and then getting two-way contracts. He's probably just going to be more of a G League favorite. I'm not saying undrafted players haven't done it. Fred VanVleet just signed the largest contract for an undrafted guy. So it's not impossible. It's just it's a steep mound for Malcolm Castellan to climb here in Detroit. There's a lot of guards on this team. So we'll see. I'm happy for both of them. They're good insurance policies. Like you're saying, can't the Pistons add one more, though?
I think that goes into effect next season with the CBA. With the new salary cap, you'll be able to sign 3 two-way contracts.
Okay.
Should have had Mikey TikTok on just for this segment alone because this is right up his wheelhouse, the G League. So I'm going to have to text him after this is over and ask him what he thinks of Malcolm.
Well, there's always going to be fans that are super hype. I'm trying to just tone it down all the time on prospects now. I'm just going to just tone it down just a little bit. We got one final bit of news for all of you watching with us right now, and that is the Detroit Pistons and the Sacramento Kings are interested in Torrey Craig. This comes from Hoops Hype. I don't currently, as the roster stands, I have no idea where he would fit on the Pistons right now, but he's another two-way player. I believe he shot 38% from three this past year. I could be wrong about that, but he's a solid two-way player. Sorry if my mic just cut out, but I like Torrey Craig. Yeah, 39% from three, almost 40% this year with the Washington Wizards, I believe. The Phoenix Suns. Why am I getting all this mixed up? But anyways, Torrey Craig, what are your thoughts on him in Detroit?
I think we talked about it maybe last week or the week before, like 2 under-the-radar free agents, Yuta Watanabe, who's going to play in Phoenix, and Torrey Craig. There is some, personal relationships with Monty Williams. Obviously, he played with him in Phoenix. This is a guy that I feel is criminally underrated. He doesn't get talked about enough. He's just a guy that is a two-way player, and he's never really made a lot throughout his career. I mean, you can look at his career earnings and some of the contracts that he's taken on. He's just a good player to have off of your bench. Now, if the Pistons can create some cap space to sign a Torrey Craig, I'm all for it. I love his game. I've been a big fan of his game for years. He's just one of those guys that just goes under the radar, and you don't really see like the casual talk about him because they're not really too familiar with his game. But I think he would be a perfect addition off the bench. The guy can defend multiple positions. He can hit his 3-point shots. Just a good locker room guy. Like I said, if they can create cap space, I'm all for it.
He's made at least $10 million in his career so far. Came in at the age of 27 years old into the NBA. But again, I'm with you. I like him a lot. 6'7", 220 pounds, can play either forward spot, shot 40% from three this past year. Definitely has that relationship with Monty Williams. He's a vet that you can bring in that can help establish a winning culture, believe it or not. You know, I mean, because he knows what is expected of him and what Monty Williams wants out of his players. So, again, you're right. If the Pistons can find some cap space, bring him in. We just got to clear some room for him, though.
Yeah, for sure. Before we do jump into some topics, I wanted to ask you this because I've been seeing it a lot on Twitter. Our power forward position, I feel like a lot of Pistons fans don't know how to grasp it just because they've told us, okay, two big lineup, Isaiah Stewart, Jalen Duren, or James Wiseman, Marvin Bagley. The Charlotte Hornets currently are trying to get Grant Williams. Do you think there's a possibility that we could try to get PJ Washington?
I've been loving him more and more. Like, I saw that video that Kevin Connor had posted. He's one of the few players in the NBA that had 100 pick and roll opportunities as the ball handler. Then I think it was like 600 or 700 as the screener in the roll man. And he can pick and pop. He can create off the dribble. He can attack the lane. He's a pretty good defender from the help side. He has active hands. Yeah, I would love PJ Washington. I think he's underutilized in Charlotte. He is definitely undersized at like 6'7", 6'8". But I mean, so as Isaiah Stewart, he brings a little bit more athletic ability at that 4 spot. If you were to bring him in, I would, if you were to tell me that it's Bojan or PJ Washington right now, I'd be okay with trading Bojan for a PJ Washington if you can make that work. Like, I'd have no problem with it. I'm also not against starting Bojan at the 4 and bringing Isaiah Stewart off the bench. You know, I have no problem with that either. But, you know, I would definitely say that the 4 spot is our weakest position in the starting lineup. And if you could get a guy like PJ Washington, I think you have to do it because he's already used to playing a complementary role. I'm not talking about him being a multiple-time All-Star or anything like that. I do think there's a little bit more to his game that needs to be unlocked because he was playing with LaMelo Ball, Terry Rozier, Gordon Hayward, Miles Bridges, Kelly Oubre. Those guys were getting shots over him. So I think there is something more to his game. And we were talking about, you know, drafting Jarace Walker because, you know, of his skill set at the 4. And I think PJ Washington, he brings a skill set at that 4 spot that Isaiah Stewart does not have in his bag right now. So, yeah, I would love to see PJ Washington in a Detroit Pistons uniform.
Yeah, I just don't think it's a possibility just because of the cap space.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's more moves to be made, but I just kind of look at our 4 spot, and I feel like that's our weakest position right now is power forward. Mm-hmm. Even though we do have Isaiah Stewart, which I'm willing to be patient in seeing if he can take another leap in development. I feel like every year he adds something new to his game, and I think that's very underrated about him. But I just wonder if the floor spacing can be where it was, you know, in the middle of the season when he was shooting 40% from 3. Yeah. I wonder if he can do that for a full season. Like, if he can, I'm good. Then I'll just shut up right now, right? Yep. But that's my thing. It's just, I think this too big a lineup, it might. I don't think it's going to last long term. I think they'll try to look for more of a traditional, like I told you, they need like a stretch forward. They need like a Kevin Love if they want to do that too big lineup. You just need a guy that could splash threes and just, you know, take advantage of other teams not guarding the power forward spot because you're going to have Cade and Ivy and all those other guys out there with them. That's only my real concern right now. It's just that power forward position. I just don't know if they're going to address it this free agency.
Yeah, that's why I was saying, like, you know, I mean, again, I love Isaiah Stewart. I do think his role ultimately is an energy guy off the bench. Like, I think he can play 20 minutes a game and he's going to look fantastic, you know, off the bench. So, and again, I have no complaints if you want to start Bojan at the 4. It does not bother me one bit. If you want to go with him and Joe Harris at the 3 and 4s, if that's even a possibility for the Pistons, depending, if if the roster stands pat, I would not mind seeing a lineup like that because, again, ultimately it's just creating more space for Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren. It's not clogging the lane for any of those guys. They're allowed to do their thing. This team only goes as far as those three take them. So try to create as much space as you can. I'm still a believer in Isaiah Stewart, but if you have a chance to upgrade that 4 spot and, whether it's trading him, which I doubt, but if you could bring him off the bench in a move where you upgrade the 4, I'm all for it. I would 100% be on with that. I would be on. It would just be amazing. But right now, I just don't see anything in the works where the Pistons are going to do that. I think it's going to be, I think we're going to play this year. And I think there's going to be a revolving door of starters at the 4 as the roster currently stands. And next offseason is when they make that splash for 4 that really helps this team and pushes them over the top.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I believe in Isaiah Stewart. I know some people in the comments are saying, the East is big. You need to have size. Oh, we have size. We have 4 centers on the roster. It's just you're not going to start James Wiseman at power forward. I don't think his shooting is up to par yet, and he hasn't really played a whole lot of games throughout his career, so you don't really know if the shooting's real or not. I think Bagley at the 4 would probably be terrible, just because defensively we're going to get cooked every possession. Offensively, we know what he's going to get you. He's a phenomenal post player, but defensively, it just would be a nightmare for Jalen Duren trying to, not only cover his guy, but also Bagley's guy at the same time. It'd be damn near impossible. So that was just something I've been thinking about all week is like, who are we going to get at the 4 spot? Like the way Denver does it with Jokic and Gordon, I think that's the type of player you need. This kind of like that hybrid 3-4 that can kind of complement everyone else.
Yeah, and I mean, Isaiah Stewart, even though he is undersized at 6'8", he has that incredibly long wingspan. I think it's 7'3". Like he was, I think, top 10 in field goal percentage with inside 6 or 3 feet at the rim, or inside 6 or 3 feet, where he was holding opponents 10% lower than their average field goal percentage. So there's definitely a role. And we see all the rumors with Isaiah Stewart. Again, I just think as a starter, he's playing out of that role. But he has developed nicely so far. I mean, I think he surprised all of us year after year after year, surprised all of us his rookie year. I just think he's more of a hustle player, maybe a spot starter, but ultimately his role is off the bench. I don't know, but let's talk about the Summer League roster. Maybe there's a 4-man on this team, on the Summer League roster that makes the cut and puts us over the top. We have some familiar names right now. We have Jalen Duren, Isaiah Livers, Jaden Ivey, Marcus Sasser, James Wiseman, Xavier Simpson, Captain Hook. He's going to be on the roster this year. Buddy Beilein. Any names that stand out to you this offseason? I mean, on this roster?
Hold on. I'm trying to find the PR. Oh, here we go. I just wanted to kind of look at it to see if there's any guys on here that would be. You know what? I'm just gonna G League and just nerd out right now. People probably don't know who this kid is, but I think a lot of Pistons fans are gonna like Kiefer Sykes a lot.
Okay.
Played for the Crews this year. Guy can get buckets. I think he was second in assists in the G League. I know he's a guard, but he's got so much DJ Augustine in his game. I think Pistons fans are gonna love him. He's just a dog. Like it says he's 6 foot, but that's being very nice. Like he's probably like 5'10", 5'11", but that kid just plays his ass off. Also Stanley Amude, another G League guy. I think a lot of Pistons fans are familiar with. He's someone I would look out for. I think Tossin has something that both of us talked about last week. He's a good wing too. I know he was an undrafted free agent. I think it was just a 10-day. Or a summer league deal, I should say. But he's a guy that I would look out for. But you got Duren, you got Ivy, you got Livers, you got a Sir Thompson, obviously. I think a lot of Pistons fans are excited for. That's who I'm going to be watching. I want to see how Sir does. But I kind of wanted to go off the grid I think Kiefer Sykes and Stanley Amude are two guys that I think a lot of Pistons fans will be impressed with.
How many games do you think just James Wiseman plays in Summer League? Do you think he stops at 1, or do you think there's a chance he plays all 4?
I think he plays all 4.
Okay.
I think he needs it personally. I think he needs all the reps he can get, just for the fact that he's been injured so much, and I think it'll be good for him. I don't really think it's a demotion like some fans are saying. Like, Ivy shouldn't even play a game. Why is he down there? Duren shouldn't even play a game down there. Why is he down there? I think these guys just want to hoop. Like, I wouldn't be like, if Cade wanted to play in the summer league, they wouldn't stop him. Like, Cade could probably average like 40 on those guys easy.
Man, that would be Ron Artest in 2005. Just dominating the summer league. I'm just excited for that first game where they roll out Jaden Ivey, Asur Thompson, Isaiah Livers. Do you think Jalen Duren and James Wiseman start together in the summer league? I hope they do that. I really do.
Yeah, I think they will, at least one game, just to kind of see where it's at, and that'll just be domination.
Dude, Pistons Twitter is just gonna fucking erupt if Jalen Duren and James Wiseman start, and James Wiseman's just knocking down threes, and then Jalen Duren's just doing his thing. You already see it. It's all going to be all over Twitter where people will be like, yes, I'm going to be one of them too. If I see it, I will be tweeting out, just pumping out tweets, talking about how Troy Weaver is a genius and the two big lineup is alive and well in Detroit with James Wiseman knocking down threes. I want to see it. I'm rooting for both of them. Man, it's going to be a fun summer league. I'm already pumped, and it's not July 8th yet. This is going to be so much fun. But we can move on to some topics that we have on the podcast.
For sure, man. Shout out to 200 people watching again. Back-to-back weeks of 200 people in here. So if you are watching, you guys are the best. Like, we're going to do a giveaway pretty soon for you guys watching, because I do appreciate it. I think we're going to do a jersey giveaway. Probably. We'll do it next month.
Killian
You
Hayes.
guys just tell me what kind of jersey it is, and we'll give it away live on the podcast.
That's going to be awesome. Okay, so my question to you is, are you starting to think this team is a play-in team? Shout out to Ashton. Saw him dropping a comment there. I know he believes we're 16. We're just going to temper the expectations a little bit, make sure everybody's healthy for the season. But do you think that this is a play-in team as the roster stands right now?
A play-in team. I think yes, if they stay healthy. I think people forget how good Cade Cunningham is.
Oh, yeah.
And I know that kind of sounds like a casual take, but this is a guy, when he came in, was being doubled just as much as Kevin Durant and LeBron James in his rookie year.
Yeah, 12 times a game, man.
Yeah. You draft Jaden Ivey, who was a 5th overall pick, who had such a great season in terms of development. He was developing things like a 3-point shot where we didn't really think it would translate right away. It translated really fast. Having a backcourt, those two in the backcourt, I'm so excited with. I think getting a wing defender in Asar Thompson excites the hell out of me, because that guy is going to defend his ass off. He's just going to be a pit bull out there. Love it. Getting a Joe Harris, getting a Monte Morris as a backup point guard. You're basically bringing back your core guys. The only guys that aren't really coming back are Hamidou Diallo, Corey Joseph, and we'll see what happens with Ronnie McGregor. I don't know yet, but I think you've added a mix of veterans and a mix of young guys that should get Pistons fans excited. You have your new core 4. It's not the original core 4, if you guys know what I'm talking about. You got Cade Cunningham, you got Jaden Ivey, Asar Thompson, and Jalen Duren. Those are the 4 guys you're going to be building around probably for the next 5 to 10 years. I think they can make the play-in. It just depends on health. And I'm expecting really big things from Cade Cunningham year 3, because I think he's had a lot of time to work on that jump shot. He's had a lot of time to rehab that leg, and I think it's going to be scary hours in Detroit.
Oh, yeah, 24-7-7 is what I'm predicting from him next season. I think this is a play-in team just based on the roster that it is right now. You got an upgrade at coach in Monty Williams. But, so long to the days of rooting for Svi Mykhailiuk. And, just guys like that were that kind of looked like rotation players, but we found out shortly that they were more fringe NBA players. That's how these teams were being assembled just a few seasons ago. And we finally, from like top down, we have quality NBA players on the Detroit Pistons. I mean, there were times where you had a 15th man getting minutes on the Pistons, and we were like, yeah, so this is it. You know what I'm saying? Like, we were being laughed at by other fan bases calling us a G League team, that the Pistons should have been playing for should have been wearing the Crews on their jerseys. Those days are long gone. We finally got a roster full of NBA players, and they are ready to make some noise in the NBA. So yeah, I'm buying that they're a playing team. I'm this close to going in with Ashton about them being a sixth seed, but I just got to see how this team starts to play as the season begins, and then I'll be more of a believer. But right now, yeah, they're a playing team to me, man. I think 17 wins, long gone. They're gonna get 30 or more this next season. They're gonna be a playing team. I 100% believe that right now as the roster stands.
Well, you don't have Dwayne Casey coaching either. You have Monty Williams coaching. No more. I don't even know I'm not taking a shot at Dwayne Casey because, he's a great guy, but no more isolations for 20 seconds and then passing it. I think you'll actually see an NBA offense. You'll see ball movement. You'll see togetherness. You'll see defense. And that's all things that Monty Williams preaches. And I think the guys are excited to play for him too. And I think the city's excited to, play some meaningful basketball. Like, no more March basketball where the injury report is like 15 guys that are out and a bunch of G League guys you've never heard of. I think we can make the play in. I think we can damn near, double our win total. I don't think it would be impossible. I think you could get, 30, 35 wins.
It's going to be awesome, man. I just cannot wait. I'm so ready for the season to start, even though it just ended. It cannot come soon enough. Do you feel like Troy Weaver addressed the needs of the Pistons so far this offseason? This is a question for you. I will answer it as well. I'm just going to start it off, and I say not all of them. We talked about it earlier on the podcast. 3-point shooting, that has been addressed. Backup point guard, that has been addressed. The biggest hole, and we've already talked about it, is that 4 spot, and that has not been addressed. I believe that they're going to give every opportunity for Isaiah Stewart, James Wiseman, for them to do their thing and at the forward and center position. But I feel like Troy Weaver has hit 2 out of the 3 issues that we needed, and I give him a decent letter grade for it. But what do you think? Do you think he's addressed the needs of this team?
I think he addressed 3-point shooting, but I think our defense still needs work.
Yeah,
I don't really think we addressed defense as much as we should. I think he did with the Asar Thompson pick. I think I almost said Monty Williams. Monte Morris is a good defender, but he's not a lockdown defender.
Yeah.
I still think you need to address defense because obviously you can't like lock down people nowadays, but you can still play it. Like, it's a technique at the end of the day. I think they need to address defense more, and then you can kind of like go down the list. 3-point shooting, check. Defense, check. I just don't think he really addressed defense so far.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big one, though. I mean, I feel like, though, he still touched on it, though, with Asar Thompson and Marcus Astor, but they are rookies. Like, you don't just want to throw those crazy expectations where they're going to be locking people up from day one, because the NBA is a very different game. We all know that. But you are right that defense is still a weakness, but Jaden Ivey, I feel like, is going to take a step. Jalen Duren's going to take a step in the right direction. Cade Cunningham, he's a two-way player. Isaiah Livers, if he's healthy, that helps with defense. So there are guys, Isaiah Stewart, there are guys on this team that can make a name for themselves as defensive players, because they've definitely shown flashes on that side of the ball. So I don't feel like that was one of the larger issues for the team. And I know that sounds kind of crazy. I just felt like last season they were playing so many G League guys towards the end of the year. And, because there were so many guys that were dealing with injuries, we really didn't get to see the whole defensive side of things yet. I think Troy Weaver and the coaching staff believe that these guys can play defense, So it wasn't such a large need in the offseason. That might sound kind of silly to a few people, but we just need to see this team healthy and see how they play on that side of the ball. But those bigger issues that I felt like, not because it's very much you got to put points on the board. And they were generating a lot of open threes. They just needed someone to knock them down. That I felt like that was the number one need this offseason, and they addressed that. So, but that 4 spot, that's the spot I'm looking at. Maybe there's a trade coming. Who knows? But I felt like overall, Troy Weaver has done a decent enough job at addressing the needs of this team this offseason so far.
Yeah, like I said, I just don't think they're ready they're in a position where they felt like they need to go sign guys like Houston.
Okay.
I think they were just okay with taking flyers for 1 year and see what happens. I think they're really banking on the development of Cade, Ivy, and Duren, having them take a next step in their development and see what they have before they really invest into like long-term contracts, which I think is smart because they could have spent the bag on Cam Johnson, but let's say he only plays 30 games and you have all that money invested. Like it doesn't really do you anything. I think that's why they didn't really go out and, sign a guy to a 4 or 5 year contract. I think they're just playing the safe game and seeing what they have in Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, and Jalen Duren. And then they can kind of, reassess what they have from there.
Okay. I like it. I do. Let's talk about this next topic. This comes from the Game Day Hoops. Are they a podcast or are they just an Instagram page?
They have their own podcast. It's basically a big media network. They cover all 4 sports. This is their basketball Instagram. I thought it was interesting that there were 2 Pistons on this list, since I know you're going to have fun with this topic too.
Oh yeah, of course. Okay, so are these 4 players bust? Anthony already said that there are 2 Pistons on them. Let's give you guys these 4 names. If you're following the Pistons Talk on social media across all platforms, you've probably already seen this post. But Cam Reddish, James Wiseman, Romeo Langford, and Killian Hayes. Are we going to talk about all 4 of them? Or are we just going to talk about Killian Hayes and James Wiseman?
Well, it's a Pistons podcast. I mean, I thought we were going to get Cam Reddish, but the Lakers went out and signed him. I thought that was just such a project that Trey was going to get, but he didn't.
So we can start with Cam. I'll start with Cam Reddish, though. I'll say he has the bust label now. And the only reason I'm saying that is because I was told he was the second coming of Tracy McGrady. Now, those were incredibly lofty expectations for any player, because Tracy McGrady, one of my personal favorites, loved watching him hoop in Orlando, especially loved when he said they were already in the second round and then got dismantled, even though they were up 3-1 on the Pistons. That was awesome. So I would definitely say Cam Reddish is definitely nearing that bust label. James Wiseman, no, I wouldn't say he's a bust. I would say he's teetering on that line just because he was the number 2 overall pick, but we've already talked about this to exhaustion on this podcast. He has not been given ample playing time. He was thrust into a role that was not fitting to his skill set in Golden State. And I feel like he showed a little bit more in Detroit. I know a lot of people would disagree with me. So I'm not ready to call James Wiseman a bust. I'm not even going to touch on Romeo Langford because you laughed at me when I said we should bring him in a few months ago. So I'm not even going to touch on that because your laughter basically answered this question. Killian Hayes, yeah, I'm going to call him a bust. I don't care what he did last season. 10 points, 6 assists. There were so many injuries on this team. Someone had to play those roles, and he did it, but he still shot, I think, 38% from the field, 26% from the three-point line. He showed flashes of being a quality NBA player. It's just there have been just more games of him underperforming than there have been games of him overperforming. So I'm ready to call Killian Hayes a bust. I still think there could be a role for him in the NBA as a defensive specialist because he is a very good defender, but the days of him being a point guard or leading a team, those are over, and that is why I'm calling him a bust.
Yeah, I thought this list was interesting. I thought Cam Reddish, like I said, I think he'll be a solid player for the Lakers. And I think he's going to get talked about so much. Everyone on the Lakers is just going to get hyped up. Like they had a sneaky good offseason so far. I mean, they signed like Torrey and Prince. Would have loved him here. That's such a good signing for them. But I think Reddish just needs more playing time. James Wiseman, I don't consider him a bust just because of the injuries he's had. And I think, the short time we saw James Wiseman in Detroit, he showed us that he could affect shots. He's not a rim protector, but he can use his length to affect shots. He's got a pretty good post game. He just needs more playing time. I wouldn't label him a bust. Romeo Langford, I think that was a Sekou draft, if I do remember, but he's just the guy that has a broken jump shot. And obviously he had strides this year, but I think it's too soon to call him a bust just for the fact of where he was drafted. Like, he wasn't a top 5 pick. He just wasn't. But I wouldn't consider him a bust. Killian, he was the number 7 pick. If you look at, the other point guards in his draft class outside of LaMelo and outside of Tyrese, I mean, RJ Hampton just got waived by the Pistons. Cole Anthony, he's a pretty good player. I think it's just a thing where how you view these players. If they didn't, live up to your expectations, then sure, they're bust. But a lot of these kids are not even 25 yet, and they still have room to grow and still have room to develop. I just don't know if, Killian's going to be on this team long term, but I think he could go to another organization, develop, and prove a lot of people wrong. You never know.
Okay, out of these 4, who would you be willing? I know I know you're not a gambler. I'm not really one either. But if you had to bet, out of these 4 names, who do you think has the longest NBA career?
The longest NBA career. I'm going to say Cam Reddish.
Okay.
I could see him playing like 15 years.
Man, I think he's kind of like a Michael Beasley, where he is a good scorer. I'll give him that. He's inefficient from the 3-point line. He doesn't really do much else in terms of basketball. He's not a strong rebounder. He's not a playmaker. He's, from what I recall and have watched and read, he's not much of a defender. He is a scorer. He's a guy that's looking for his shot and his shot and his shot and trying to get buckets, like a Michael Beasley. Michael Beasley, he is your favorite NBA player's favorite NBA player. Still getting buckets in the big 3. Probably will play till he's like in his 50s. Pro basketball. Like, that's how good he is. Unfortunately, if you're not elite in a couple of categories, you're really not going to have a long NBA career. They'll probably teeter on that line. I could see Cam Reddish. I could see him playing a few more seasons in the NBA, but I really think he's eventually going to go overseas and just like have some crazy highlight reels. If I had to take a bet on out of these 4 names, who's going to have the longest NBA career, I'm going to say James Wiseman, just because I feel like we're moving into an era of the big man, and you're just always going to need large bodies to try to slow somebody down. And I mean, he's 7'1". He is skilled. He can run the floor. I love talking about that play where he's bringing the ball up the floor in transition and then drops it off to Jalen Duren, who jumps from like 9 feet out and throws it down. It was just incredible. So I would have to say that James Wiseman will probably have the longest career out of these 4 names. And Romeo Langford and Killian Hayes, I mean, it's just really a race to the bottom from here on out. I'm just going to say it.
Yeah, I mean, if Killian was in San Antonio, I feel like they could fix them, I think, with Tony Parker being around, Wemby and all those guys. I think they could fix Killian.
I would love for him to have a Tony Parker, like the floater game, the runner and the floater. That would be great. He just does not have it. I don't want to be too negative, man, because I've talked of exhaustion about Killian Hayes, man. Like I've already said on this podcast, I still think there's a role for him as a defensive specialist. I think there are some creative ways you could use him offensively when you take the ball out of his hands. It's just up to a coaching staff and him to make those adjustments and play that way. But Killian Hayes, yeah, go get fixed in San Antonio, man. But what are your thoughts on if the Pistons roll out a front court of Duren, Stewart, Wiseman, and Bagley to start the season? If those are our 4 front court players, how do you feel about that?
I mean, I want to give it a chance because Cade really didn't get to play with Duren in the starting lineup.
Okay.
And I think Stewart's game, we saw him, shoot way more threes this year than he did years past. So I think it's something there. I think if Wiseman and Bagley are your 4 or 5 combo off of the bench, Bagley's going to really have to work on that jump shot, personally, for me. Because you're just going to be clogging the lane. I know they can get out. Like, you always see players saying, like, hey, get out the lane. I'm going to go for a layup or I'm going to go for a drive or whatever. I just think if you want to do that too big lineup, Bagley is going to have to become more of a reliable shooter for me.
Yeah, because you could definitely see the defense sagging off of him and not even caring about him on the three-point line. You feel like that is coming. I know he's hit a few threes in his career, but he's very inconsistent. I know it's not a large part of his game, but if he wants to continue to get minutes off an NBA bench, like, I think he'll always have a job. I mean, he's a very skilled offensive player. When you give him minutes, he's a 14-7 guy, whether it's 20 minutes or 28 minutes per game. The dude can just fill it up. But if he wants to take that next step in his NBA career, and I think he very much does, it's about developing that outside shot. That's what's going to catapult him to having a 10, 12, 15-year career in the NBA and continuing to get that money. And so far, we haven't seen it. If the Pistons roll out those 4 players, I'm very excited about Duren. I think he's the starting 5. I love Isaiah Stewart. I've talked about him on this podcast. But at this point, without seeing James Wiseman and Marvin Bagley yet, it's a huge drop off between Duren and Stewart to those two. And I do not feel confident in our front court if it's just those 4 players to start the season. I would like to see Troy Weaver make a move to bring someone else in that's going to strengthen that front court rotation. But because, I mean, I feel like at this point we're going to see Bojan at the 4, which I have no complaints about. We're going to see Isaiah Stewart at the 4, which Isaiah Livers, which I have no complaints about. I even feel like if the Pistons want to get creative, you might even see some lineups with Deshaun Thompson at the 4. I mean, maybe not against the Cleveland Cavaliers, but against a few other teams that like to go small, it could be, you could use him in some creative ways. But again, if it's those 4 rolling out to start the season, it's going to be a long year.
Yeah, like I said, some people in the chat, I just kind of want to address something. Yes, Cade Cunningham and Marvin Bagley built chemistry when we traded for Bagley. We understand that. I don't think Marvin Bagley will be a starter on this team.
Mm-hmm.
I think Cade makes everyone around him better. I think everyone knows that. Cade and Duren, I think, just as a pick and roll combo, I think will be deadly. It's awesome. Breaking news: Corey Joseph is going to the Golden State Warriors. Wow, Kojo, shout out.
Wow, they've got kind of tight backcourt with him and Chris Paul. Holy crap!
Yeah, just came from
ring, man.
Woj. What's it?
He really wants that ring. Well, I mean, he already has one, right?
Yeah, he got one with the Spurs, I believe. But yeah, back to the Bagley thing. I think Bagley is a good player. It's just you're not going to start him, and I think when more Pistons fans understand that, like, could you start him at the 4 instead of Isaiah Stewart? Sure, but defensively, you're going to give up a hell of a lot more points. And that's the one thing about his game that Pistons fans that are Bagley fans, they don't talk about. They don't talk about his defensive game. It's just not good. It's not a slight on him. That's just the type of player he is. He's really good in the post, but defensively, he looks lost out there sometimes. He doesn't communicate. He lets guys blow right by him, and then you're just like, okay, what the hell just happened? Like, I remember Sadiq Bey, when he was here, and Bagley was in the starting lineup, Sadiq Bey used to, like, cuss him out because he just would not say, hey, I got a guy behind me cutting. It's just, defense has just never been his strong suit. That's, like I said, players aren't going to magically just change. You're not going to become into lockdown defenders. That's why I think Stewart will be your 4 and Duren will be your 5. I don't even think Bojan will play the 4 at all. I think they're just going to be stubborn with this too big lineup and see where it goes.
I mean, he played 53% of his minutes at the 4 last year.
That's because we were hurt, though.
But I mean, he played like 90% of them in Utah. I mean, I know they had Rudy Gobert. He's been playing the four pretty much since his days in Brooklyn. Like he's always played some minutes. I don't think no, I've already said I could see him starting. Like I have no doubt about that. Like Bojan is really not that bad of a defender. I mean, he looks better when the team looks better. Like he's a guy, I mean, you're going to be able to blow by him, but he's good at positioning himself. He gets a hand in the face, but he's just not the most athletic player. Like that's why guys beat him. But I think he's solid on that end. And he's a good team defender, I should say. Like he's a communicator. He's going to point things out. He's going to talk on that end. I think those are skills and that make you a quality defender. And like you were just saying, Marvin Bagley does not talk on the defensive end. And plus, if you start him with Duren, that lane is clogged. Let's just be honest. Offensively, it is clogged. Now, if you want to bring Marvin Bagley off the bench at that 5 spot and not play him with Duren, and he becomes the roll man and he becomes the lob threat, we've seen that with Cade. That's worked. I have no problem with that, but I just don't. I'm with you. I don't want to see Bagley start. I want more spacing on this floor. And even though Isaiah Stewart only shoots 32% from the three, he has the confidence to shoot those threes, and that's going to keep a defensive honest. I mean, it's not Marvin Bagley, like, you see the guy sag way off of him when he has the ball outside on the arc. That's not really the thing with Isaiah Stewart, even though he's not that much better of a three-point shooter. He just has confidence in himself to take them.
Yeah, I'm not saying Bagley shot's broken by any means. I just think if you're looking at it schematically, defensively, it makes more sense for Stewart to start at the 4 versus Bagley. Like I said, I don't hate Bagley. I think he's a great player. I think off the bench he's a luxury. I think he could lead the bench unit in scoring just because of how talented he is. I think he's a great player. I just think if you want to be a better defensive team, you have to understand that is not his strong suit. It's not a shot at him or anything. Go back and watch the games. He's not a lockdown defender. He never has been. I mean, before I had this podcast with you, I had a Kings beat reporter on here telling me if I have to watch Marvin Bagley start at the power forward, I'm going to go insane. He's just like, he just doesn't play defense. He just doesn't. And like I said, not every player is going to come in and be a two-way player.
Yep.
And that's fine. I'm fine with that. Like, I think he's a great player. I think he's a valuable piece, but I think the Pistons have told you, like, hey, we want Stewart to be our power forward long term.
Yeah, and I won't even. We don't have to keep on touching on that. Like, I think long term, I really do. Whether it's a starter or off the bench, he's going to be here long term. Marvin Bagley, I think it's a more of a prove it year for him with the Detroit Pistons. I don't know how much longer he has under his contract, but whether it's 1 or 2 years or whatever, but I think he is, like I've already said before countless times, he's valuable. He's more valuable to you in 20, 22 minutes per game than he is in 28.
Yeah, like I said, I think he's a good player, but like I said, it's just some fans aren't as high. I don't want to say I'm as high on Stewart, but I will say that I think the team and the organization, they believe in the shooting, they believe in the defense, and I think that's why he would probably get the starting line over a Bagley in a situation if they still want to do the two bigs, but we can just kind of end it there because I'm not going to get in debate who's better, Bagley or Stewart, because then it's just, people just get reckless.
Yeah, no, it's all good. We can move on to Q&A.
Okay, for sure. I just got to find them real quick. Hold on. I didn't even see this, but this is a super chat. I think Weaver crept the bed with free agency. What do you think about that remark?
I mean, like I said at the beginning of the podcast, I just didn't feel like after, so many hours without news, it became pretty clear that he was not going to make a big splash in free agency. But he traded for 2 guys that have 1 year left on their contracts in Monte Morris and Joe Harris. That's $28 million coming off the books. And then you add that with Bojan, that's another $19 million coming off the books. If Cade Cunningham looks like he's going to be a top 25 player in the NBA, which I think he very well can be, you're going to see the Pistons make a bigger splash in free agency next year. I think it's all dependent on that. If Cade Cunningham looks to be like he can be a top 25 player in the NBA, which is very good, you will see the Pistons make a bigger splash in free agency. We're talking like a Pascal Siakam and those tier players, those multiple-time All-Stars that are, looking to extend their career with a new team. That's what I think you'll see next offseason. So I don't blame Troy Weaver. I think he made moves for next year, and yeah, I have no problem if he crapped the bed with free agency.
I think fans, when they looked at all the cap space we had and we didn't sign anybody, I think that's kind of where they're going with like their opinions. But I can understand fans like being mad because we talked about Cam Johnson at nauseum.
Yep.
Jeremy Grant at nauseum. We thought we were going to make a big splash, but we didn't. Maybe that's where, this comment is coming from. Just because you have cap space doesn't mean you sign free agents. You can also do what Troy has done since he's gotten here. He takes on trades. I mean, he traded Saban Lee and Kelly Olynyk for Bojan last year.
Well, I also understand fans' frustration because we've heard from beat writers that this was the year that Troy Weaver is going to make a splash in free agency. That this was the final year of the restoring or the rebuilding, whatever you want to call it. But once Cade Cunningham went down for the season, I think you can crumble up that plan and just throw it in the trash can because you need to see what you have in him first. And again, if he's a top 25 player, you're going to make a big splash in free agency next year. And I think with his injury, it moved the rebuild just one more year. We moved it one more year down the line. That's what I think happened. And unfortunately, it sucks because I was excited with a lot of the other fans that I thought this was going to be the offseason. They made a big splash in free agency. Like you were saying, we talked about Cam Johnson, Jeremy Grant, and some other names. Those were being the two biggest that we could have seen those two coming in and helping the Pistons become a playoff team. It just didn't happen because of Cade Cunningham's injury. It all depends on Cade. It all depends on him. That's what this has all been about. Like if he is healthy and he looks the part, we're going to go very far. We just have to be a little bit more patient. But this is still going to be a fun season coming up.
Yeah, like I said, I think they're just banking on the development of the young players that they drafted. I think they're really just putting all their chips on the table on those guys. I don't really think he crapped the bed. I just think if you look back since he's taken the job, the most money Troy Weaver's ever spent on a free agent is $13 million. And that was Kelly Olynyk. Every move that he's made that's been kind of like a big splash, so to say, or swing for the fences, Jeremy Grant was a sign and trade. Bojan was a trade. Joe Harris was a trade. Monte Morris was a trade. Like Troy Weaver likes using his cap space and trading for guys. Maybe he really likes Joe Harris and he wants to sign him long-term. Maybe he really likes Monte Morris and he wants to sign him long-term. We don't know. We're going to have to wait and see. He could flip him for draft picks at the deadline if we're not where we want to be. You never really know. Maybe they really like someone in the draft this year. I don't know. But that's what I would just tell fans is when you look at free agency and you want to grade Troy Weaver, just know that he's more high on trading for a guy maybe a year or two down the road so he can lock them up long-term.
Yeah.
I mean, he did it with Bojan. As soon as we traded for Bojan, he gave him an extension. And a lot of teams thought they were going to have to break the bank to keep him, but, the Pistons got him on a pretty friendly deal. This is an interesting question. This is from Ryan. Does this mean a big fish is coming next summer?
I don't want to say I would bank on it, but again, like I've been saying, if Cade Cunningham looks the part, looks like a top 25 player, you will see. I think the Pistons definitely put more effort into bringing in a bigger name player. I don't think it's like, like a LeBron James type tier player or anything like that. I think it's more of, like a Pascal Siakam. I'll throw that name out there. That tier of player. That's what I think would be coming next summer. I really do believe that. A second star to run with Cade. If Cade's star shines brighter, like we all think it can. Again, it really depends on Cade. It really does. And if he looks the part, yeah, I definitely think Troy Weaver brings in a big fish.
Yeah, I mean, I just pulled up like the 2024 free agents, and a lot of these guys, they haven't even updated their list. Like Sabonis just signed an extension, which that guy got paid. So, shout out Sabonis. Like you said, Pascal Siakam will be a free agent. DeJounte Murray, we don't need any more guards. Jaylen Brown hasn't signed an extension yet with the Celtics, which I'd assume he would. But I don't know. I kind of feel like that's a pipe dream still. Tobias Harris will be a free agent, which there are rumors that the Pistons might try to trade for Tobias Harris, but the Sixers want a shitload of draft picks and young players for him. Just looking at some of these quote unquote big fish, I don't really think there are a whole lot of big fish that you can really use your cap space to go get a guy. I think that's why a lot of teams this year haven't really, committed. I mean, outside of like the Rockets, really, you haven't really seen too many teams like commit long-term money to just above average guys. I don't know when the big fish is coming, but I would assume it's through a trade, not free agency.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of throw that in there too, like a trade or not just a signing, but someone. I feel like, again, if Cade looks the part, there will be someone bigger coming to this team next offseason. And again, it doesn't have to be like a tier 1 MVP candidate. We're just talking like a guy that flirts as a multiple-time All-Star or was a former All-NBA team member.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are saying, like, what if, Asar turns into a Jaylen Brown type? You don't need that big fish then.
Yep.
You never know. Like I said, you got to develop these guys and see what they are before you try to, like, get all these, like, big fish or whatever you guys really want to call it. So this comes from Josh, who was watching live on Facebook. Don't know if he's still watching. He said, do you guys think this team has any glaring needs after the initial moves in free agency? I assume more moves are to come, but as it stands now.
Yeah, we've touched on this in this podcast, and the most glaring need that I think both of us have agreed upon is the 4 spot. That is, we both love Isaiah Stewart. We can't say that enough. But that power forward spot, that 4 spot, is the weakest in the starting lineup. And that would have been something like you were talking about earlier, like an Aaron Gordon type, like that type of versatile 4 would have been really nice to have on this team. Like I talked about Jeremy Grant, talked myself into him the last 2 podcasts as a guy that you could play him like how you were playing Hami, like in that dunker spot, drawing up plays for him to move without the ball and getting him some easy baskets. Like that would have been a lot of fun. I feel like the 4 spot is a glaring need, and it's Isaiah Stewart's. Like if he takes a huge leap, then you could just forget about this. But right now, as it stands, yeah, he brought in 3-point shooting. He brought in a backup point guard. That 4 spot, though, it's kind of weak.
Yeah, I feel like our needs are still on defense.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to, add better defenders on the perimeter, but I think that's the only thing I really see. I think Duran can become that anchor on defense. It's just he's going into year 2. I hate to compare him to Andre Drummond. I'm not, before I get killed on this, but when Andre was going into, his second, third year, he started to protect the rim, but it wasn't consistent. I think Duran will be more of a consistent defender. And I'm interested to see how he does in the G League. That'll kind of tell me where he's at in his stage of development. I know it's against, lesser competition, but it'll show you what he's been working on this summer. So I think Duran could be a great rim protector and, your starting center for, the next 10 years.
I mean, Paul George compared him to Dwight Howard.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it takes time with these kids, and I think a lot of us are just so impatient because we haven't really won anything, but have to remember a lot of these guys aren't even, 25, 26 years old yet. I mean, they're still babies.
I mean, Jalen Duran can't buy alcohol yet.
Yeah. Like, I think that's the only really glaring need I see, Josh. Is just we need better defenders on the perimeter, and I think Marcus Sasser will definitely contribute to that. I think Killian Hayes, he's a pretty good defender on the perimeter, but I don't know how much playing time I'll get. I think Monte Morris does bring that, but I feel like we need a little bit, maybe one or two more players that can really complement that defense where we can kind of, switch more, but kind of like the Celtics do, where they switch everything defensively and you don't really have to worry about, someone blowing by you.
Switching everything. What happened to flying screens?
That's defense now, man. Everyone switches. Even the Heat do. Ooh, this is a good question. I like this one a lot. This comes from Dog Pound. I feel like we need to trade Bogdanovic, right? He doesn't fit the rebuild.
I mean, I guess it depends on what you mean by he doesn't fit the rebuild. I definitely think I listen to the Knuckleheads podcast a lot, and I was thinking about Darius Miles and Quentin Richardson talking about their time in Los Angeles where they were, they were like a 35-win team, but they always talked about how they needed veterans to teach them how to win and push them over the top. And I'm not comparing this Pistons team to those Clippers teams, but I do think a veteran presence is important, just like they're talking about on those podcasts. Like, you need to learn how to win. You need to learn how to close out games. You need to know how to get to the playoffs. And that's why I would have to disagree with Dog Pound. I feel like, if the trade is right, trade him. I've talked about that. Like, if you get a PJ Washington for Bogdanovic, go ahead and do it. I have no problem with that. Yeah, he is an older player, but I would rather have an older player that gives you production game in and game out than just a young guy that may or may not have potential. So I would have to disagree with Dog Pound. I just think, Bojan is here to be that veteran presence to to help the Pistons win and teach them how to win and get them back to the promised land that is the playoffs.
Yeah, I think I see this question a lot. Not even, in the YouTube chat, but, whether it's on Twitter, Instagram. A lot of people want to trade Bojan. And I think they just want to trade Bojan just for trading him. I don't really think. Last year, I'll give you an example. Bojan was flirting with the 50-40-90 club. And for you guys that are watching, don't know what that is. Shooting 50% from the field, 40% from three, and 90% from the three-point line. It's a very rare club, and only a few players in NBA history have done it. And he was averaging 20 points a game with terrible spacing, mind you. Bojan is a very valuable piece, and I think he's one of the Pistons' most valuable assets right now. I think if you were to trade him, I don't really think you would get value back because I don't think he's going to net you a high first-round pick. I don't think he's going to net you a young player because I just don't think teams are willing to do that for a guy that's in his mid-30s. I think he's valuable for the team, and I think he checks a box that the team currently needs right now, and that's a veteran presence, like you said, and also three-point shooting. I think he's a great player. It's just I think sometimes fans just look at his contract and look how old he is and say, let's just dump him for, maybe a draft pick or dump him for a young player. I think he has value on this team. I just think some fans just maybe they look at the age and they don't understand it with all the other guys being, younger.
Do you know who that one Piston player is that had better shooting splits than Bojan did?
Who's that?
He's John Barry. Can I read you his shooting splits his first year in Detroit? 48.9% from the field, 46.9% from the three-point line, and then 93% from the free throw line. I mean, obviously he was not shooting like Bojan, but John Barry was a hell of a sniper, bro. I always like to bring up those numbers. He was like in a crazy club with the Detroit Pistons his first year. Balding every time he ran down in transition. It was incredible.
Dude, I forgot about John Barry.
You can, man, John Barry is one of my personal favorites, man. But you could literally see the hair just leave his head as he was running in transition. It was crazy.
Oh, man. This is another free agency question now. I think this will be a pretty quick topic from us. Why didn't we pursue Draymond? I think we had a strong chance.
Draymond wants to win and he wants to be in Golden State. I don't buy the whole thing where he wants to play for the Pistons. I know that there have been reports where he would love to come home and play for the hometown team. I don't buy it. I think he's a Warrior for life. He might, like at the twilight of his career, jump onto another contender. If that's Detroit, that's great. I just did not. I mean, I would have loved Draymond in Detroit. I think he could have really helped at that 4 spot. It would have been fun. We get a communicator on defense. He would have definitely brought that side of the ball with him. A guy that can run a dribble handoff, that would have been incredible. But I mean, I think there might have been like a 1 or 2% chance he comes to Detroit, and that's being generous. I just think he was always looking to re-sign with Golden State, and he opted out because I think he actually took less, right? When he opted out. I mean, I know he's making more over the 4 years, but I think he was due to make like 27, 28 million. And now he'll be making roughly around like 25, I think. So he took a little bit of a discount.
Yeah, he took a discount. I think he was set to make, like you said, 30 million. But getting back to this question, I always thought it was just smoke from the media, whether it's Brian Windhorst or whoever it was. Like you heard, Draymond might go to the Pistons because he's from Michigan. Like even if that was the case, Draymond would probably just use it as leverage, saying like, "Hey, the Pistons got enough cap space to give me a deal." I always thought that Draymond would finish his career in Golden State, and I think they're doing right by him, not only by trading Jordan Poole, but also giving him a 4-year deal and letting him just retire as a Warrior. And I think even though I'm a fan of his, I wouldn't want him here in Detroit because I don't think they would be able to handle his intensity. I just don't. I think it would be a really bad match. Not for his basketball IQ or his knowledge of the game or anything like that, but his intensity, I think, just wouldn't rub off on some of these younger players. I think some of these younger players today are very pampered and spoiled, and Draymond is just like he's from Saginaw. Like if you've ever met someone from Saginaw, I mean, they work their ass off. Like,
oh yeah, no, I got a client from Saginaw, and like he's the nicest person, but he calls himself the Sag Nasty. Like he is. There's something about people from Saginaw, like you're saying, man. They're a different breed of humans, man. There's some tough people, man. They really are.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think Draymond's a phenomenal player. I just don't know, like fit wise, I don't know if it would work. I think the dribble handoffs, like you said, would have been fun, but I don't know if this current team could like deal with him because we saw him like bitch out Kevin Durant during the finals, and Kevin Durant left because of it.
Yeah, he kept saying, "We don't need you." It's just unbelievable. First of all, I just want to say, not even first of all, I just want to say I hated that segment on ESPN where Brian Windhorst was like, the caption was, yeah, the Pistons and the Kings have the assets to bring Draymond Green home. And then in the video, he says, like, yeah, there's no chance. Dude, screw ESPN for doing that, dude. I hate when they do things like that. But I do got a question for you. Better odds, Jordan Poole becoming an all-star in the East or the Warriors winning the next NBA championship?
Ooh. Better odds. Run it back with the Warriors, honestly. They got Corey Joseph. They got the point guard, Corey Joseph. I think the Warriors will be much improved. I think they're obviously Gary Payton's medicals are pretty bad if they're signing Chris Paul and Corey Joseph. Man, I don't know what happened with him, but did want to get to this question from Chris. Shout out to him. This is kind of a loaded question. He said, "You guys have been in media for a long time. Can y'all tell me how do a guy hate Detroit sports still able to have a job in this town? I get criticism, but the line, thank God for y'all." I'll answer this first, and then I'll let you answer it. When I worked at Woodward Sports for 2 years, a lot of these guys that had jobs in media, like Detroit media, they don't really care whether the team wins by 100 or loses by 100, the paycheck stays the same. A lot of guys that covered these teams, they're not really fans of it. Like the Pistons beat writers, for example. We've had James Edwards on a couple of times. We've had Mike Curtis on a couple of times. They're not actively cheering for the Pistons to win games because the paycheck's the same regardless. Yeah. The only beat writer, I know one beat writer, and I'm not going to say who it is, who's actually a Piston fan. That's it. There's like maybe one Piston on the beat that I know personally that's a hardcore Pistons fan, and he'll never tell you that because he wants you to read his stories. But I think that's the main reason is that these guys are getting paid regardless, whether they want to, have the pom-poms for the Pistons or, criticize them. Whether it's the ticket you're listening to, whether it's Woodward Sports or whatever, news media outlet that you're listening to, no, these guys are getting paid. They don't care.
Yeah, and I honestly think a lot of I'm just going to stick with Detroit sports media because that's what the question's about. I feel like a lot of members of the media in Detroit, even really just Michigan for that matter, they're really just going for the clickbaity titles, man. You know what I'm saying? I don't even feel like they believe half of the stuff that they say, and they just want you to argue with them because they know if they put a headline up there, that it's going to get a reaction. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what I really feel like it's not, maybe not necessarily all it's about, but and like what Anthony said, it's all about a paycheck. You know what I'm saying? Regardless of how these teams perform, they are getting paid no matter what. But I really do feel like they just try to draw us in and try to get a reaction, and they don't believe half of the things that they say.
Yeah.
But I also do feel like there has to be that line between being a fan and being a member of the media. Because you don't want I feel like you and I do a good enough job where we're objective and we're not just we are fans first and foremost. This is a fans podcast, but I feel like we're pretty honest when we talk about the Pistons. We're not people that just try to sugarcoat things. We're not trying to talk them up. We're not always lovey-dovey. I've definitely been hard on the Pistons this past season. You know what I'm saying? I try to be an optimist though, but also at the same time, I try to be a realist too. If I don't like something, I'm going to speak on it, and I feel like that's the way it should be. But again, just to, bring it all back, I just feel like a lot of these media members, they just say things to say things just to get a reaction.
I'll also tell you guys something that this isn't really common knowledge, right? A lot of these companies, I'll just use Woodward Sports, for example. Half the stuff that those guys say on the station, I would probably say 90% of it they actually believe, but the other 10% of it they don't. They just don't. They want you to engage with them. That's their main goal and focus. Is they could say, "Hey, Cade Cunningham sucks. We should trade him." Let's just say 97.1 says that. 97.1 is trying to get you to click on their article so they can make money. They're just trying to eat like everybody else. That's the main thing. We can be objective and we can criticize, but sometimes it just gets negative to a point where you just don't want to listen anymore. But like I said, the people that are very successful in this town are the people that are upfront and honest and people that you can trust. And I think there are some in this town that I do respect and I do trust a lot. And I feel like there are other people in this town that just pour it on to the point where, if I see them tweet or I see them read an article, I'll just scroll past it and waste my scroll on Twitter because that's a thing now.
I also feel like a lot of people in the media are just to do it to they're not necessarily sports fans. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I remember there was someone on ESPN that it was years ago, but I remember them coming out and saying I just did this because it's a job. You know what I'm saying? I'm not that invested in sports. It was just a job opportunity. So I took it, and they wanted to do other things in the media, talk to actors or other celebrities and not really focus their attention on sports. I feel like you get a mixed bag of that. Me, I want to be in sports. I love doing this podcast. I love, I'm a broadcaster too on the high school level. I work with the MHSAA here on the east side of the state. On the west side of the state. I do those things because I just love being in sports. You know, I mean, like there's a lot of stories that can be told, and I just want to be at the forefront of them. For me personally, I'm just talking about me. But.
Yeah, like I said, there's certain people in the media that are very genuine and nice. Like I said, I met a whole lot of people when I was working down at Woodward, and I think that they're a company that has a big voice in the city. Same with 97.1. Like personally, I like Mike Fileni a lot. I think he's actually softened up a lot over the last couple of years. I think he keeps it honest and he keeps it real. I don't have a problem with Fileni. I think there are certain people at 97.1 that I can't stand, but I'm not going to name them here on this podcast. But I feel like everyone in the city, has their spin on Detroit sports, and I wouldn't really say they're hating. They're just trying to get a paycheck, you guys. I understand that at the end of the day. They don't care if you agree with them or not. It's just a paycheck.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. We can't get into that right now. I mean, there was just something that one of those dudes had said about Wemby where it's like, he's not going to have an impact. And it's like, dude, you can't really believe that. There's no way you actually believe that Wemby is not going to have an impact his first year in the NBA. I mean, yeah, is he going to lead the Spurs to the championship? No rookies do that. I mean, Magic Johnson did, but he was on a loaded team when in the 80s NBA, they weren't as big as the NBA today. There weren't even that many. There were less teams than there are today. Yeah. It's when you say things like that, it's horseshit, bro. Like, it's stupid. Like, I mean, it's obvious what you're trying to do. And it's honestly kind of annoying. You know what I'm saying? I feel like you can have a good sports program, whether it's a radio show or a podcast or a TV spot or an article or a blog, whatever. You can have an interesting voice and say things without trying to be outlandish. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can have a good opinion without being crazy and over the top. It doesn't have to be so clickbaity. It's kind of annoying, to be honest with you, sometimes with some people. I mean, I'm not saying for 100% transparency, but I mean, dude, we're not saying outlandish things every time we're on this podcast. And look how many views we get. You look at how many people are watching on a Sunday night, and we're not saying, dude, Wemby's going to suck. Like, we don't say things like that. We don't have to because everybody would know we're full of shit if we did. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just stupid. And it's really just annoying, man.
For sure. We'll do these final three questions and then we can wrap it up. This comes from Ryan again. This is an Asar Thompson question, which we haven't really talked about him too much. Asar won't get enough minutes at the backup three if Bojan is starting. Are we expecting him to take some backup 2 minutes as well?
I expect Asar to take minutes at the 2, the 3, and even the 4 spot this season. I feel like with today's basketball where it's positionless, you can play. There's a handful of teams where you can go small and you will see some more creativity, I believe, from Monty Williams than you did from Dwayne Casey. And I don't think Asar is going to get 30 minutes a night. I think he'll hover around 20. I saw someone on Twitter say that they love his odds to win Rookie of the Year. I guess I understand that from a gambling standpoint. I would not put money down on Asar to win Rookie of the Year. I just don't feel like we're not going to get that type of production from him. And what we're really going to have to see from Asar is more watching him and not really watching the box score. But again, just to answer your question, I think he'll get minutes at the 2, get minutes at the 3, and get minutes at the 4. He'll eat this year at those spots.
Yeah, I think 15 to 20 minutes is probably what he's going to get just for his defense alone. I'm not sure about the backup 2 minutes, though, Ryan, because I feel like we have so many guards. Like, you have to think you have Burks, you have Sasser, Joe Harris, if you want to put him at the 2 spot. But I think he'll probably play more 3, but he's capable of playing 2 if you need him to. I feel like that 2-guard rotation spot, I think it's pretty filled. And I think they kind of have the guys that they want to play at the 2-guard. But I think most of his minutes are going to come at the 3, maybe possibly the 4, if you want to play some small ball lineups.
Do you really think Sasser's going to get big minutes this year's rookie year? I feel like I feel like he'll be on the Pistons roster, but I wouldn't be surprised if he plays heavy minutes with the Crews. Because, I mean, you have Caden Ivey at the back in the backcourt. You have Monte Morris now. Alex Burke is still on the roster. That's 4 guys getting minutes. And then you have Asur, who he can play at the 2. I just feel like Sasser is going to be kind of the odd man out unless he really shows something. I mean, he looks like a hell of a player, and I definitely think he's part of this future. It's just I feel like now with the current way the Pistons roster stands, it's just it's finally we're going into a season where we have enough talent where we don't need to give heavy minutes to the rookies.
Yeah, like I said, I think he's probably going to play most of his minutes at the 3 spot.
Okay.
I don't know. I'd find it very hard to believe him playing the 2 spot since we have so many guards. But to answer your Sasser question, I do think he will get minutes just because he's played college basketball for quite a long time. I don't think there's going to be a learning curve with him as much. He's not a one and done. He's going to be a guy that can contribute right away and get you buckets and play great defense. So I think Sasser could probably get 10 to 15 minutes as well. I think he's more than ready to take on that type of role.
Okay.
Ooh, this is a good question from Wes. Wes Weaver Jr. Will we have another top 5 pick next year?
I'm going to go ahead and say no. I think the Pistons are out of the top 5 picks with the roster that it currently stands. I feel like Asur Thompson was the last pick in the top 5 for the Pistons. Now, I'm not saying they won't be in the lottery because the lottery goes to 14 teams. It's just the top 5 pick. I just think there's, again, like I just said, like a minute or 2 ago, I feel like this is the first time in a couple of years, top to bottom, we actually have quality NBA players, 1 through 12. And it just feels different this year. I mean, even if they're not a play-in team, I don't expect them to be a top 5 pick team unless the basketball gods show favor on us. But it's not even really like the draft you want to have a top 5 pick in anyway.
I'm going to say we're going to have a lottery pick. I don't think it'll be top 5. Top 5 would tell me that everyone got injured and we traded everyone at the deadline. I think we'll be in the lottery. I just don't know where exactly in the lottery. And don't draft LeBron James Jr. because I don't want LeBron in a Pistons uniform.
It would be kind of wild to see him, though, in a Pistons uniform. But do you think that they will be closer to 14 or 5 next year if everybody stays healthy?
You're really going to make me say a number?
Yeah.
I think they'll be between 7 and 10.
Okay. That's fair.
Because I think with the vets that you brought in, year 3 of Cade, year 2 of Ivy and Duren, I think there's going to be a lot more wins on this team if they stay healthy and they start gelling. But I think it's going to take probably a good 10 to 15 games to learn Monty Williams' system. I think there's going to be a learning curve there, but I think once they learn it, I think the sky's the limit for the team. And I'm really excited, man. I know it's only July and we have 3 months left until the season. It feels like the season starts, but I'm excited. I think, you're probably 7 to 10. If you go crazy and if you're picking 14, that tells me you made the playoffs. So I'd be happy with that. Ooh. We'll do this one more question. We can get out of here. Will Duren dunk on Wemby?
Oh, dude, I was just watching Stromile Swift highlights today, and I hope to God he has a Stromile Swift type dunk on Wemby like Stromile Swift had on Yao Ming. Yorkie Yao Ming got 8 at the rim, and I want to see it happen to Wemby. Like, I hope Wemby has a long, prosperous NBA career, but I hope Duren, just at least on one play, makes him look little. And I hope it happens this year. I mean, Shaq got dunked on once. So, yeah, Wemby, he's getting dunked on. I hope it's on, and I definitely hope Duren does it.
So I was reading an article, and they said that Wemby's not going to play all the summer league games. And the last summer league game is against the Pistons. So, and Duran might not play either. So they might just both be sitting out.
Do you think if Wemby says he suits up against the Pistons, Duran says, fuck it, let me get my jersey on?
I would love that if that happened.
I mean, I don't care. I mean, I want to see it happen in Summer League, but if it happens during the regular season, that is just going to be incredible. I hope they make a card out of it. I hope I can get a poster of it. Like, if someone puts it on a T-shirt, I'll buy it. You know, I mean, send it to the show and I'll promote it. You know, just feel free to do that as well. But yeah, I feel like it's going to happen. I feel like it's going to happen at some point this year.
I kind of want him just to play all the games.
I know, so do I, but he's going to look like a god if he plays all 4 games. He's just going to look like – he's going to really look like Dwight Howard this summer league. It's just going to be incredible.
For sure. But we can wrap it up if you want. You can tell people where to find the podcast and support it.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you guys for listening to the Pistons Talk Podcast. Do us a favor. Go to Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts, and subscribe. After you subscribe, drop a comment, leave a review, rate us, but more importantly, tell a Pistons fan.
Peace, guys.